Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reacts where today we have ourselves the entire album from an act named Echo Strike titled Wonderland, and if we switch over to here, my understanding is that this is their fifth. We've got the art here. I have reviewed music from them before, such as Can't Do Anything Right, Not Inside Your Mind. I've reviewed albums from them in the past, and it's good to hear more. This is apparently going to have a really interesting concept with like lots of like music videos and stuff per track and stuff like that. So if you like your music videos, it's something to look forward to. If you like the album today, we're going to listen through this album actually from start to finish, and we're going to hear what we think. We've also got lyrics to look through as we go through this album. So we'll start with Rabbit Hole, track number 1. I like those vocal harmonies. Really going for that sort of synth pop aesthetic with this one, I think. It's great to have space though, and dynamic range. Great use for a riser there with the filter. It's nice to have an adjustment of the textures here. Even if we're sort of reiterating on familiar textures from previous. Okay, so that was the first track, Rabbit Hole. So yeah, I am referencing the lyric sheet I got provided for this, but I think just from hearing the track alone, I kind of get the impression this is sort of more of an Alice in Wonderland sort of thing to an extent. I don't mean literally. You know, it's okay for there to be more than one type of rabbit hole there. But you get the inference here that this track is about going down the rabbit hole, appreciating the sights and sounds and dancing and having, I suppose, a good time, just getting sort of sucked into it, intoxicated by it. And I think that the groove, the chord note accents on the drum kit, the use of the different sequences and synths and stuff, you know, whether they be the bass is pulsating and kind of pushing you along, the interesting use of those kind of very sort of like dance-oriented snare and sort of cymbal patterns, the synthetic textures on some of the vocal parts, as well as just the really pretty melodies there that are almost sort of like trance-like. You've just got a lot of different cool electronic ideas that are applied to this piece immediately in a way that does make sense from a pop aesthetic. And I just think compositionally, that part in the center where we went into that sort of that wormhole, that rabbit hole there, was an interesting move. I feel like for the most part, the vocals were tight, just rhythmically. There were some parts where it was a little bit organic, and I feel like it was done well. It sounded like it was like a live performance rather than they were trying to sort of make it sound completely rhythmically perfect. And I kind of appreciate that. But I think in terms of production, in terms of the way the themes work within the piece, and the way that the synth, bass, and drums coalesce together, they niche well. The vocals sit neatly on top. You can figure out what's going on. And it does kind of get you into the mood for the rest of the album. Because we've got Running on Empty, track number 2. Interesting use of sound design with the way they're panned. Almost like the sound is going behind you in the headphones. I like the way that we roll into those extended pad key chords. Also, sorry to interrupt, I'll try not to do it too much, but we have a lady vocalist. Did we have the lady vocalist for the previous album? I think it's great that we've got male and female harmonies that just they typically at least octave range work well, although the guy's comfortable in his head voice, which is cool.
Your ear to the ground, here, no sound, you left, and no goodbye, done with you, breathe tonight, tough shit, your man is rough, I ain't sad. Now you wish you were someone else.
Good use of octaves with the bass. Great use of repeaters on the sides there. It's just nice to have an alternate interlude or an interval, you know. And for it to have its own identity within the piece as a twist in the tail, you know.
You gotta be lonely, you gotta be lonely, running on empty,
Yeah, no, that was solid. I liked how he rose the vocals up a little bit further in their range for that last set there, just to add a little bit of further adjustment to it. So I think if I was to try and follow on from Rabbit Hole as a concept into Running on Empty, it's we got stuck in the rabbit hole, and maybe going into the rabbit hole was someone being either taken away from a situation where things weren't okay and they found a sort of a cheap alternative or maybe an easy alternative. Or simply, I think it could also be a comment on a person who is trying to find that salvation, just being so tired and worn out by whatever's pressuring them to just, just to keep going, or what is causing them to feel that tired. It's a comment on the person that is going into the rabbit hole. That's my take on it. And so I think that that's almost like people are beating themselves up, say tough shit, etc. in that track. And it's kind of brutal, but it's what a lot of people do with themselves. There's a weird kindness to the way that the track sounds throughout. Like, it's very gentle with a lot of the extensions and the harmonies, the beauty of the keys there. Some of those sequences and risers, even though they've got a bit of feistness and fire behind them, they're never too aggressive. The bass and the drums are always sort of very well presented and kept together, and there's never any harshness to any of the tones or textures. And like, don't get me wrong, it's not like there's no fuzz to it, but it's done in a way where it's almost like warm and inviting. It's almost like the song is trying to wrap you up in a cozy blanket because it understands how tired you are. I think if you couple that with a vocal performance where clearly they are trying to empathize, even in the verse sections where it's a bit more sort of like blunt, they sound like they're trying to empathize with the person and what they're going through, the male-female vocals and stuff like that, almost like maybe they're saying it to each other at the same time, like they understand each other, they're just still struggling to communicate with. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like misplaced directions and intentions. But I think the use of the extensions within the harmonies indicated a complexity to the situation. The actual overall implementation of the instrumental choices here dictates less of we're going down a rabbit hole and we're going to dance the night away vibe. It's coming to terms with our own limitations and trying to be gentle with that. And it's also just a comment, I suppose, on some of the decisions with the delays and the echoes on like the reverbs, or going from left to right, etc. The sound design within this album so far has been very good. I appreciate the attention to detail in that regard. I don't really know what we could have done to improve this track in particular. I suppose for me, we could have potentially have added an occasional additional lead layer on top of some of the second times of some of those choruses near the end, but I still feel like it was strong. We got track number 3 though, Infection. But we're very comfortable with our quarter note accents and moving things around and creating an environment and atmosphere with the music in terms of panning and stuff. Really committing to the vocal tuning and stuff. There's a very subtle guitar with a bit of drive in on the sides there as well. Interesting sub-layer. And that little high-pitched sound, that's occasional. It's just an interesting note for that to accent. Dun, 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 dun. That like little kind of like pitched hi-hat there. It's just an interesting choice there compositionally. And back to the B section or the C section, I suppose.
Infect me, those eyes that stare. You infect me, that skin, your hair. You infect me, your voice is a song. You infect me, come on, come on. You infect me.
Okay.
You infect me. You infect me.
I feel like I understand why we might have gone for 3 times of that. I think you could have potentially built up a bit more tension with that if you'd gone for the full 4. It can work to have like an odd number in the sense that it's unpredictable. Oh, suddenly we're switching in that direction. But I'm just not sure if we got the trade-off that we wanted to from that part or the payoff, because I was more taken by the adjustment rather than the guitar coming in, for example. Because that's a really cool guitar solo. Okay, so that's Infection by Echo Strike off of the Wonderland album, track number 3. So I think the way to approach this one is to sort of consider it like, okay, this person, maybe we're running on empty. Maybe it's because of the way the other person has treated us. Maybe we want to go down the rabbit hole and escape because we're just so kind of like tired by our reality and how we're treated by people. And the infection maybe is how you feel. Either maybe you're lovesick or because of the drain that that person is having on you with them being in their life. Either way, I think that, I mean, it's almost like literal, but it can also not be, right? It's interesting with the whispering later on in the track, almost like you're inviting the person in a very sort of like sensual way to do it, almost like in sort of like a masochistic way. That's an interesting angle. I think if that's the case, that's a bold decision, but I love it. I think it's really cool. I think a lot of this track was really great. I appreciate the fact that we had those guitar parts on the right. And I think that for the most part, having them as a sub layer with some sort of like filtered and sort of delayed parts was a sensible decision. And I think that, again, the use of the various sort of like synth sort of like oscillators, there's just a really cool texture and tone for that part that did segment it in a way from the other sort of riffs or ideas that was very sort of like, it was distinctive. I think that it's great to have the vocals as a focal point because we're clearly very comfortable with our voice and telling the story we need to. And I think that going between the main vocal lines, the spoken or sung parts, and then those kind of like actual kind of like sung melodies, instead, that was a nice transition between those two, going backwards and forths. And there were other cool ideas, such as the pitched hi-hats that would go ding, ding, ding. I don't know how to sort of make the sound with my voice, but like just there were cool ideas. And even that little there's like kind of like a lead that would kind of go in and out and kind of sort of like flow over itself a little bit. That had an interesting sort of approach to the way it was played. If there was one thing I would say, though, I feel like the guitar solo could have been a little bit louder in the mix, because what it kind of felt like with headphones is that we were still very much like, we're having a guitar solo, but also the vocals are important. I just feel like if you'd had the guitar come up a bit more, there was just still a little bit of space in the center where It would have only been like a dB or two, maybe, just to round it out and to allow the limiter to be a bit more pushed in the in the mastering chain. You could but also I respect if we are wanting it to more sort of be like you're paying attention to this, but then the vocals come in on the side kind of thing. It's just personal perspective. I feel like there was enough space in there to be able to boost that a bit. Otherwise, I think it's really competent. It's great to be able to sort of just easily kind of understand what's going on with these songs without needing to have the lyric sheet or whatever. That is not something you can always take for granted. We have hit or miss, though. Track number 4. That's very close. That's very close to another song that I'm familiar with.
Once upon a time, I tried to make you mine, but I failed miserably. Now I can't look at your face, the anger and the hate. It always pains me. I gotta go, 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 gotta get some more of that confidence that meant so free. I gotta run, 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 gotta
Yeah, that's good.
so I light the fire to take it higher. I can see, knock it down.
Sorry. I know I'm pausing a bit. And this is not because I feel like it's necessarily even. It's just me pointing out things I've noticed. It's because I've been following Echo Strike for a while, and I know they're good musicians. And I feel comfortable being as open as I would usually be, but especially because I feel like we could have had the good things just a little bit louder. It feels like we're kind of rising towards something and then kind of came back down again. And that's not like a criticism. It's more just like in terms of energy levels, I feel like you could have maybe committed to having things just a little more full sounding in that chorus, as opposed to kind of going, oh, no, we're pulling it back again. To be fair, it could just be instrument choice or panning with the vocals on the sides, but still.
Once when I was 5, found barely alive,
Oh,
grasping for life. Now that I am old, I can't be bought a soul. I only make up my own mind. I gotta go, 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 gotta get some more of that confidence that meant so free. I gotta run, 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 gotta catch the sun, so I light the fire to take it higher. I can see, knock it down, push it around, focus, it'll miss, knock it down.
great development there with that synth lead, though. That's good. Is that like an Irish flute or something like that? It's great to adjust the rhythm, the groove to go halftime here. Okay, and so we're going.
hit or miss.
So with this song, one of my favorite parts was they got to run, run, run. Like, just the rhythm of that was fun with this song, Hit or Miss. I appreciate the fact that we're not, like, there's a sense of urgency behind it, but it's not really taking itself, it doesn't seem to be taking itself super duper seriously. I mean, I think that Hit or Miss is effectively, it's talking about the risks and the chances you take with the people you love in your own life, and the fact that you've got to keep moving forward. And when I say that I don't think it takes itself too seriously, I only say that because it's a bit more of a fun rhythm. Like, the actual motif behind it with the minor leanings and everything like that, the more subdued, almost like we're kind of mourning something with the melodies. Even if we go up higher in some of those ranges there, it's not a particularly happy sounding track there. I think the reverb towers add a sense of misty nostalgia to it. It was an interesting decision at the start with the drum kit. Reminded me a lot of music from the 80s and stuff like that. In a way that I think was positive. And we might be reminiscing and looking back at our life, such as when we discussed when we were 5 and stuff like that, and the decisions we made following on from that. Like, we weren't going to take life for granted. You know what I mean? And I think actually that shows some similarities with other tracks across this album. I remember this is one of the most stylistically consistent albums I think I've heard so far from Echo Strike, or at least in terms of the instrumental layers. They're very comfortable, I think, within issues at this point. It's an interesting choice to have that almost flutish kind of thing going on in that interlude section there, the way it flitters and flutters around and surrounds you in the headphones. It's an interesting decision because I wouldn't have expected it. And that can be a double-edged sword. There is the not expecting the occasional switch up that is like, oh, that's a pleasant surprise. Oh, we've had a fair bit of this. Oh, now this is a thing. The concern for me now is, and again, this is not a criticism, especially because we haven't had it yet, but a concern for me is, how careful are we going to be about having a different sort of feeling for like an interlude section, especially if we don't have additional context from the vocals? How careful do we need to be about that? Because if we just have a different theme or a different bass line or a different chord progression or different instruments for that interlude each time, it then becomes ironically more consistent and predictable because it happens more often. But at the same time, I think that the sound design, the way things moved around the stereo field, just having that refreshing sense of like a glow to that, almost like we're running but we're imagining things improving. You can kind of imagine why we do that. So it has context. I think just another 2 things before I go. First, the end harmonies with the vocals, the lower and upper range stuff, the way that they were captured, they're just fantastic. Actually, quality of the vocal recordings there, I love the tone of them. They're very crisp. But it's also the fact that in the second time through, each of these choruses would have that synth lead kick up, and we just develop it so easy because we had that additional bit in the second half. It was just such a no-brainer, but it's effective. So I think in general the first 4 are really solid. Not Gonna Follow by Echo Strike, track number 5.
Darkness all around, cold and new.
Back and forth, single and double track vocals.
Changes with sound, breaking through. Energy comes close. I can't pursue another tragic pose. Right on cue. I'm not gonna follow you. Oh.
See, that was more effective there. Like, I think things flew upwards there, and you kind of felt the music go up with the riser, and then things kind of kept there with those cymbals there, that similar sort of energy there. It rose it, you know. mean, it's a jam. It works.
Pain can pass right through. There's no way I can follow you.
Back to the whispers.
I'm not gonna follow you. You ask me to follow your plan, but you don't care if it lasts. I'm not gonna follow you. I'm not gonna follow you. I'm not gonna follow you. Not gonna follow you. Follow you. I'm not gonna follow you. The pain can pass right through.
So here's where
I can follow you.
a solo section on top can really help. Because there's so much fun you can have with the flexibility with how open it is harmonically.
I'm not gonna follow you.
No, so that was really conservative, but I understand why we did it the way we did. The fundamentals of pop and that kind of thing are adhered to here. It makes sense. So I think I'm not gonna follow or not gonna follow is about maybe thinking you could have taken a chance on someone with hit or miss, but then realizing no, actually you are not worth me doing this with. You left me behind last time. This is terrible. This was not a good situation, and I just don't want to be hurt again. And I feel like that's kind of smart. It's almost like we're learning from running on empty. We're kind of learning to build ourselves back up again, sort of like propagate a healthier sort of like situation within our world and with the relationships with others. So I think that's an interesting story here. It was easy to sort of follow along to. The main focal point here being the vocals. I mean, there are some really cool ideas here. Again, like with the use of the risers and it going up within the chorus sections in a way that's very satisfying with the upper level resonance. The mixture of different sort of 16th note bass sequences on the low end, mixed in with the 808 sort of like the bass subs that were like kind of pulsating in the low end there, and parts where it needed to be a little more low key. We had clear identities per part of the song there. I feel like, again, at 4.5 minutes, you potentially could have had another like lead instrument, like a lead synth or something like that, but actually, or you could have potentially have done more with like coloring the harmonies at the end, like they've maybe like could have gone higher than you had previously with certain parts. But it's also like we're trying to create catchy, sort of like memorable lines here that sound good. And sometimes it can just seem like you're over-egging the pudding if you do much with that. I mean, like, to be clear, this is very competent production and composition. It does sound like a lot of the stuff that I've heard from musicians in the 2000s and the 2010s and stuff like that, and I think that it's effective. I have no complaints and no doubts that the rest of this album is probably going to contain similar music to this. We're very comfortable with our synth bass and kick patterns, and the vocals are the focal point. I think the percussion here, again, moving between the chord note and eighth note grooves, 16th note grooves, should I say, but also being comfortable working different rhythms, not just with the cymbals, but also with the snares and occasionally adding 16ths on the end of parts is really cool. But yeah, no. So it's a lot of the comments at this point are basically things I said about earlier tracks. I'm gonna still go through each song as an individual, just out of respect for the music, because each song deserves an equal go. But you may find I repeat things from this point on, and that's not a bad thing. It just means that the quality is consistent. We got track 6, Find a Way. Although we do have this wonderful harmonized guitar, or does it have an effect on it?
You're all alone. You can see no one. You never found the time. Nothing left to find. Do you know when?
And bringing on those offbeat hi-hats here.
You want it all, but that's not how things fall. You're out of time. Everything on the line. You gotta find a way. You gotta find a way. You're out of time. Everything on the line. You gotta find a way. You gotta find a way.
I mean, it's nice to have the guitars continue throughout, and to hear them as another sub-layer. Because the tricky thing about lead guitars is that they can often be a sort of part of a similar frequency spectrum to the vocals. So you have the problem of trying to balance those within a mix. So don't get me wrong. When I say the guitars could be louder, it's not when there's singing going on, because they will compete and it will get ugly. And it's probably part of the reason why they are quieter.
Gotta find a way. 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 There's much to learn. Your skin can burn. Is it the end you see? Inevitability. The time has come. You're the last remaining sun. Will the world survive? You're the only one alive. You're out of time. Everything on the line.
I love that it stopped there.
You gotta find a way. You gotta find a way. You're out of time. Your life is on the line. You gotta find a way. You gotta find a way. You gotta find. You gotta find. You gotta find a way. Gotta find a way.
Great adjustment of this part.
The time has come. You're the last remaining sun. Will the world survive? You're the only one alive. You're out of time. Everything
I like the fact that we had like the call and response between male and female vocals at that part near the end. I think there's a lot to appreciate about this track. You might have heard me kind of like humming out a lead line on top. I don't want people to think I'm being rude when I do that kind of stuff. As a musician, I hear and I hear space and I hear where things can go. And I understand as a reviewer, my capacity is to listen to the music and kind of address it as it is. I think keeping a relatively minimalist approach to it, it's effective in the sense that it does allow a lot of time for you to like kind of absorb a lot of what's going on with everything else within the piece, especially up until the point where it completely stops. So I think maybe not going to follow is walking in to find a way, because even if we're not going to follow this person, if we're not going to take this pre-established path for us, we've got to find a way to get out and do our own thing. Or maybe that is the other person that we're not going to follow that is kind of running out of options. Either way, I can kind of understand how Wonderland works and is operated at the halfway point of it. I feel like, aside from like my comments on like the minimalism of some of the layering in certain parts later on in the track, I think that, again, the vocal performances are competent. We're very comfortable in head and chest voice. And I like the mixture of doing some like cleans and some sort of modulated stuff there. There was a nice sort of swing and kind of bit of swagger. There's like these interesting synth sounds that oscillate on the sides, and they sound great. And I appreciate the guitar parts as well. We had that sort of like lower texture on the bottom right side there. And it kind of filled out the stereo frequency. I think we also might have had some parts on the other side as well, which maybe we were a little bit less modulated or affected. They had a bit more sort of funky sounding. I like the little twinkles of the kind of music box melodies that we have there, the little short kind of plucked parts there. There's all these different sounds that I appreciate working with these major or minor. I haven't really spoken much about that melodies or harmonies, because they're typically 4 chordal parts unless there's a diminished or like a minor 7 flat 5 or something like that. They're working with the major or minors for the most part to not sort of overcomplicate things, I think, and to allow further focus on the nuance established by the vocals. The drums continuing to push forward with that chord note pattern as well, with occasional 8ths and 16ths to sort of sweeten things up a little bit, and whenever there are potential risers and stuff like that. But I think the strength of this track, one of them was that we had that moment where there was a break to just appreciate just the vocals by themselves. That dynamic shift there was noticeable, it was palpable. I'm not sure if this track necessarily needed to be 4.5 minutes, and that's not because I dislike listening to it, but I'm just not sure what the remaining 30 seconds or 45 seconds of it added that wasn't within the previous 3 minutes 45. I think it's more than okay to have a longer track, don't get me wrong, and I think it sounds cool. It's just from from a utility perspective, it's what is that extra 45 seconds of the song, iterate. And if it's like more of an extended mix kind of thing, because we are doing the electronic stuff, don't get me wrong, either way, it's totally fine. Just being transparent there. I feel like if you had included a different kind of lead melody or something additional over top to further establish and develop it, it might have been more meaningful. But because you kind of kept it more conservative in the sense that it was more about sort of iterating on those existing bass lines and drum parts and stuff you had for a lot of the song, it seemed like it was more just of an extended mix case. But again, that's fine. It's just, again, that subjectivity to a certain extent. We've got track number 7, Ride the Wave.
It must be a mistake somehow.
We're going to talk about this in a moment. Sorry to interrupt. There was some onomatopoeic kind of stuff going on in the previous track as well. I think it's an interesting technique. I don't hear it often, but I think if you're using it as a rhythmical device, it's kind of cool.
It's all lost anyway. The truth is hard to accept. The lies are so well kept. The drink takes to me. Mine's as far as the eye can see. We don't wanna repeat.
Great sense of bounce to that.
Ride the wave. You know the way. Come on and ride the wave. It's time to make them pay. Come on and ride the wave. Can't find must obey. Come on and ride the wave. Nothing left to say.
Iterating on that initial motif, that's cool.
Control is the game. The end will be the same unless you get in line. There's no next time. The way, raise the stakes. Look the other way. Escape the shade. Ride the wave. Ride the wave. Come on and ride the wave. You know the way. Come on and ride the wave. It's time to make them pay. Come on and ride the wave. Can't find must obey. Come on and ride the wave. Nothing left to say.
Great, so we're adjusting the... No, let that just be the end. I'm sorry. We could have just let that be a cool way to end it. We could have just let that... This sounds like I'm being harsh. I promise I'm not. Just bear with me. It just would have been cool to have just allowed that to maybe transfer it into the next session. Just leave the person wondering what's going on. Because if we're going to go into another iteration of the chorus, I just feel like we're safe with that. We're safe with the chorus at this point. We understand the message that is being put forward.
Come on and ride the wave. You know the way.
You could have even had the but kind of going as like a sub layer underneath to allow all of them to come together.
Come on and ride the wave. It's time to make them pay. Come on and ride the wave. Can't find must obey. Come on and ride the wave. Nothing left to say.
Yeah, like we had the lead guitar underneath that, which was cool. So we had development of that last chorus part, but I just feel like having the that part at the start, then returning to it in the midpoint, and then having it at the end was just kind of like a bit of a tease in the sense that it was like, oh, we're going to get the resolution for why we have this now. And then we're back into that final part, but we got the chorus again. This one's kind of tricky from like a lyrical perspective. Come on and ride the wave. You know the way. Come on and ride the wave. It's time to make them pay. Come on and ride the wave. Can't fight, must obey. Come on and ride the wave. There's nothing less to say. And then you've got control is the game. The end will be the same unless you get in line. There's no next time. The truth is hard to accept. The lies are so well kept. The drink takes to me minds as far as the eye can see. So is this the drink is in like literal alcohol or something like that? Is it about kind of giving in to the effects of like drugs or like the alcohol and getting drunk and do something off of that? We don't want to reap the rewards of the meek. stand right next to me, listen, don't speak. I'm not quite sure what this track means, but I think it is about trying to find another way to cope with the situation aside from physically kind of bashing your head against a wall. You know what I mean? Like struggling with it. It's about trying to find a way maybe through the cracks or around it or something like that. I think that fundamentally, compositionally, the track works well with the mixture of different sort of bass, drum, and some of the guitar elements that are in play here, as well as just, synths and keys. Like the fun, the ba da dun dun dun. It's just a really cool idea. And at first, with the vocal, like in the intro, I was like, okay, what is the context of this going to be? Yeah, the tribal stuff was a really cool concept. I think that at the start, I was a little unsure about it because I wasn't sure what the context would be. But I think as maybe we were drinking more, the tribal stuff got a little bit more intense. And we started being invited more and more to come on and ride the wave. I'm wondering if it was deliberately cut short, that last tribal bit, to sort of be like, no, you're getting sucked in further, but then told to come back. But I feel like you could have had both. And I maintain that just personally. I feel like you could have had the tribal stuff going on underneath the bottom, even if it was filtered to be less pronounced, just to have had everything kind of come together at the end. And maybe just kind of crash over itself, just kind of stumble over itself, How do I describe it? It's like there's some really cool, unique ideas. And I like that we're trying to combine the fundamentals that work really neatly for a lot of genres of music, especially the kind of pop, sort of like dance music and stuff like that. And I think the tribal stuff is cool. And even though I'm kind of like a little bit kind of like this could have been done slightly differently, I still think it's great that we're pushing the boundaries and trying new things. Even though I don't necessarily still understand what the track is about, I feel like performatively it's tight. There was enough kind of like diversity with the actual parts included within it. And I appreciate the vocals in terms of like the call and response situations, the harmonies, the way we're sort of messing around with the pitches and sort of positions and stuff. It's cool. We got Cirrus High, track number 8. Let's do it. That's pleasant. Oh.
I wanna get high. Driving, looking, someone gone, phone just ringing out. Shout. Head is hot and it's spinning in the clouds.
I mean, like, fundamentally, there's no issues with it at all. Pretty easy to follow along with what they're talking about.
Running, jumping, falling down, can't find a way out. Loud, head is hot and it's spinning
See that? Oh, that's attitude. That's personality. That makes songs interesting. I think that Cirrus High is not only about wanting to get high, but also what happens when you have the need for that. I'm wondering if Ride the Wave was talking about people maybe having a trip or something and kind of getting like lulled into a false security of thinking that was the only way to escape their problems. And Cirrus High is them sort of now being dependent on that high after not knowing where they were going to go. Almost like they were locked in a situation. They resorted to maybe taking drugs or something like that. And now they just want to get high. And that's sort of the way they've gone with the Wonderland situation. And I think that fundamentally, when you have the guitars with a bit of grit and kind of like drive on them, bit of sizzle there with a groovy kind of bluesy kind of riff there, you have the sort of the dance chic with the drums, this kick snares and cymbals you had previously. So you know it's a dance track. And you have like an A-B side there where it's sort of more bass oriented in the first half, and then you go more for the upper synths and the pads and those head voice falsetto-ish kind of vocals in the second. There's just an easy sort of transfer between like different focuses and things are structured very clearly in a way that's very compelling. I mean, like, I'm listening to the track at 2 minutes 55. It's very compelling. Like, I appreciate the diversity of the concepts within here. And I think, as opposed to some of the comments I've made where tracks were maybe, we'd had like enough of the choruses by the 4.5 minute mark, or could have just allowed something to end differently, or we got less value maybe subjectively from having that many hooks. 2 minutes 55 seems like the sweet spot for me. It's not that they can't write longer songs, but I think when you get to that 4 minute mark, if you've got an established theme or motif, you've probably explored it quite a bit at that stage, unless you're continuing to elaborate further on a story like a through composed one as you go along. And with most of these, we kind of tie up our loose ends by about the 3 minute mark, which is why we're then needing to go do something different, the interlude, or switch things up entirely. So again, to be clear, they can write longer form tracks. I just also appreciate the ones like Cirrus High, where they're a bit more sort of like simplistic. You get the attitude, the simplicity of the lyrics and stuff like that as well. It's just easy to follow all along to, and I feel like they're really good. But I think there were some really pretty melodies and harmonies here from both singers, and I think the lady vocalist, I feel like they could have some solo parts within this track where they're just by themselves occasionally. Again, I like both singers, but just to have their perspective for a specific point might be cool, you know. We got Too Much Too Soon, track number 9.
Going away, leaving for a change. You know what it's like to stay. Objects break when you throw them in my face. Shake my head and meditate. It's too much too soon, fighting all afternoon, and I know you ain't gonna change. Why do I pass the time too much. Oh, it's too much, too much. It's too much, too much.
See, this is an effect. It is an effective interlude here. That back and forwards from left to right. I like that. It's kind of like it's rolling on the too much too soon. Like it makes sense for like.
Too much, too much. Too much, too much. Oh, it's too much, too much. It's too much, too soon. Fighting all afternoon, and I know you ain't gonna change.
So this isn't about drugs though, right?
You really were never mine, and I know things ain't gonna change.
That was very quiet at the end. I wasn't expecting it to be like quiet for 14 seconds. That was too much too soon. So is this track referring to maybe the Cirrus high we had there? Maybe we were getting high on love. Maybe we were having issues with this person who is suffering from drug withdrawals and now causing issues. I'm not quite sure whether it's the perspective of one person and you're going between depending on the song it is, or if it's one person's journey the entire time down the rabbit hole. It's an interesting sort of like track anyway. So if I talked about it by itself, I assume it's about someone they're just in like a really rough relationship and they're just struggling to deal with the stress of it and looking at the amount of time they spent together and really, is this actually worth it? I don't know if this necessarily requisited a major motif. I think that we're trying to sort of keep it a bit more upbeat and chirpy and catchy. So having a faster tempo and having a similar tone of presentation to previous tracks makes sense within the album. It's more like we're trying to sort of like downplay some of the severity of what we're discussing by trying to make it accessible for people to sort of dance along to and enjoy themselves to. And it's an interesting decision there. I don't disagree with it in a sense because I feel like if you get too dark with that kind of stuff, it can be off-putting and it can be like the one track on an album that's just weird because suddenly it just gets a bit too real. You could have potentially inserted some sort of like harsher textures to try and sort of make it seem a little bit less kind of pretty sounding, especially when some of those almost sort of like trance-ish textures came in with the synths. But it's okay though. It's okay though. It's energetic. It's bouncy. It's trying to have fun. It's just that I suppose as an act, if I was passively listening to this and I wasn't listening to the lyrics, I wouldn't have gotten from what I did from the lyrics from listening to this. Maybe we're excited because we realize that it is too much and we know we need to get out. Maybe that realization is a major thing, but yeah. Still, I feel like in a similar comment to Cirrus High, the fact that it is a bit shorter, especially with that too much, that back and forth there in that interlude, just the way it kind of connected back to the hook line and stuff like that was very effective. You kind of imagine how all of it was kind of tied together. And to be fair, the track was about 3 minutes 14 anyways because of the quiet stuff happening at the end. So it's an interesting track. Again, I feel like the short form stuff is just as good as the longer stuff. We've got track number 10, Get Out of the Way. Again, great effort with the actual processing delay changes and stuff on these synths. That really, it's fantastic ambience established. It's gorgeous.
Cut off, turn down, mute the sound. It's too loud. I tried many times to make you see it wasn't me. Your mixed up head is too blind to see. Now do you gotta get out of the way?
Okay.
Gotta get out of the way today. Oh, gotta get out of the way. Gotta get out of the way
I like how we're filling out the stereo field there.
Gotta get out of the way. I don't know what you think you're doing. But it isn't working. It's funny that you think you're worth pursuing. Total ruin. Stand in my way and you'll hit the ground.
Oh, so the ladies doing the backing vocals in the background on the sides, and then we've got the mains in the center.
Stop me from building, I'll break it down. Gotta get out of the way. Gotta get out of the way today. Oh, gotta get out of the way. Gotta get out of the way today. Oh, gotta get out of the way. Gotta get out of the way today.
Interesting fourth interval there. Very regal sounding.
Gotta get out of the way. Gotta get out of the way today. Oh, gotta get out of the way. Gotta get out of the way today. Gotta get out of the way today.
The plucks or tune percussion as a secondary layer is kind of cool. And interesting, just allowing those repeaters to sort of pan out over the last few seconds. So that was Get Out of the Way, track number 10, I think. I mean, there's some pretty spicy lyrics here. Stand in my way and you'll hit the ground. If you stop me from building, I'll break it down. And I suppose the juxtaposition is just how chilled out the music sounds in regards to the heaviness of those words. I don't mind it. Again, I think we're trying to balance an equilibrium of catchiness with some sort of like more intense lyrics. And it's not like that's a super duper unique thing or like no. I more mean it's just we're trying to balance it. I think we do balance well for the most part. It rotates around the minor key with sung parts that I think mirror the expression expected out of this kind of stuff quite well. I think part of what I appreciate about this track is actually the work between like the mains and the backing vocalists and how they add a sense of dimensionality to the mains and the sides there. Working with some interesting fourth intervals there and some of those chorus patterns there that was kind of sweet. Hadn't heard much of that throughout the album, and I like the fact we're mixing with different sort of like combinations. I think like, again, the gentle use of risers, the way that we had those tom transfers there, exploring the kit a bit more, allowing for the full breadth of it to be used was good. And ultimately, it was a song where I think we're just sort of trying to calmly explain our position from the position of someone who's maybe gotten the stuff kicked out of them. And I think after Too Much Too Soon, you kind of understand how that all connects, you know. In fact, I kind of get a feeling of what this entire album is about at this point. It's been an interesting journey, and I've liked a lot of it. But I think it's a competently played and performed and written song here that doesn't fall short in any areas. I think that the chord progression we have here is relatively interesting in the way that it goes back to that minor in a way that is... I think it's satisfying how it goes back to that minor in a way where it just loops, even with a bit of tension in those chords in the mid part. And a lot of the comments I've made for previous tracks are prior to this one, in terms of production or like vocal quality or anything like that. But we've got ourselves Shelter in Place, track number 11. Yeah, we're messing with some interesting intervals with those vocal harmonies.
Shelter in place. Hear the sound, look around. The world seems upside let me stay. The pathway illuminates. I don't wanna leave, shelter in place. Come on now, hit the ground. The world seems upside down. Whoa, whoa, shelter in place. I can keep on moving to it. Can I just stay? Please let me stay. The pathway illuminates. I don't wanna leave, shelter in place. Hear the sound, look around. The world seems upside down. Whoa, whoa, shelter in place. Shelter in place.
Coming out from that, good.
Shelter in place. I can keep on moving to it.
Yep. Yeah, this is good. Yep.
Please let me stay. The pathway illuminates. I don't wanna leave, shelter in place. Come on now, hit the ground. The world seems upside down.
Big finish.
Whoa, whoa, shelter in place.
Interesting. Ah, see, I like that track because of the short form factor, not because I want the songs to be shorter, but because I just feel like we got the context we needed lyrically. We had that interesting sort of bit of adjustment in that interlude with a strong theme overall outside of that. I think that this is after, we have the track Get Out of the Way, where we do leave that toxic environment that we're in and we try to find a place to be okay. So I'm wondering if after that shelter, we're looking to find Into the Sun, almost like the Escape from Wonderland is figuring out that we were getting abused all along and now we're going to go out of the rabbit hole and find a happier future. But I also understand when they talk about the world seeming upside down, maybe it's because we just realized how bad things were and we're kind of sort of calibrating ourselves to this new life that we live, but it's tricky to do so, and that's what this track is discussing. And I think here the vocal harmonies with like the fourth or like the second intervals that they have here, bum 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 bum. No, they're fifths, aren't they? Are they fifth intervals? It kind of sounds like they're working off of the first and fifth of the triads. But either way, there's a sense of regality and a glow to the vocals because of that. They are strong. And having the synth kind of play like a cute little melody, it kind of sort of like percolates around the place is nice. And the bass line being very similar, as well as some of the other sort of drum parts to previous tracks. There were slight adjustments in some of the tones of the individual drums is good. But I appreciate the fact that some of the guitar parts, I think, in the background of the da 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 da, that they're like kind of mirroring some of the vocal melodies there. It's fun because of the fact that it's just an extra sense of like awareness of the instrumental part and how it needs to coalesce with the vocals to be sort of have that further chemistry. And there are these kind of wonderful sort of synth stringish kind of pads there, sort of like glow and warmth to it, even though there's a sort of sense of drama to it as well because of what we're discussing. But just to be able to have the distorted vocals in that interlude section and just to have like just no drums and to allow things to kind of pause for a certain amount of time to allow things to float and process the information, then to go back in for that final chorus at the end was smart. With 2.5 minutes, you don't feel like you're overloading anyone with anything like that. You're not missing any context. It's just fun. It's short and sweet, in and out. And I think that some of these shorter tracks are some of the better ones off the album. Again, it's no shade for making longer stuff. It's just, I think, because we just seem comfortable that we've kind of tied it up in a bow. It's a confident track. We got Into the Sun, track number 12. Interesting line, man. Into the sun.
Sun shines on without you. The sun shines through. It's strange to think I was missing, banging my head on the wall. You were mean, pretty obscene, but had a way to stand tall. I don't remember past December. Everything was cloudy this fall. Now you're missing. I hear the hissing, the deflation of it all. Fire burning, wheels turning. Follow me into the sun, lost in space, heart erased. Follow me into the sun, the sun, the sun. The sun shines on without you. The sun, the sun, the sun shines through.
So what are we going to do for the last interlude section?
Follow me into the sun, the sun, the sun. Follow me into the sun.
Okay.
The sun shines on without you. The sun, the sun, the sun shines on without you. The sun, the sun, the sun shines through. Fire burning, wheels turning. Follow me into the sun, lost in space, heart erased. Follow me into the sun, fire, the sun, the sun. The sun shines on without you. The sun, the sun, the sun shines through.
So that was Echo Strike, Into the Sun. The last track off of the 12-track album titled Wonderland, released on the February 1st, 2025. There's also some merch down here apparently, so that's genuinely really cool. Okay, so I think for my final thoughts on this track Into the Sun before we head into the overall analysis and conclusion, I think that Into the Sun is discussing how we found shelter and then we've just spent this time kind of healing after that situation with that person, the drama that we went through, the trauma potentially, just kind of coming to terms with how they're not there anymore. And I think that that is a great way to close out the concept that is Wonderland. It's an interesting journey that we've been on here. I'm largely positive about it. I think that the major focus was great. It was nice to resolve to what purportedly kind of amounted to like the majors here. I think that made sense here. It wasn't happy the entire time. There were some minors in there, and they kind of like weighed things down a little bit and added a sense of sort of gravity to it, because I don't think it's meant to be a totally unique, happy experience. There's still some stuff we're working through, but it's just coming to terms with the fact that the sun is still shining and it shines on without the person. I appreciate the fluffiness of some of those synth sequences and the way they articulated specific notes within the chord progressions and the key signature that would make it a bit more kind of like happy, upbeat, and positive. Similar drum patterns to the same one, similar approach to the bass. The vocals had a lot of room to move. Occasionally there would be like adjustments and like other positions of things in like the stereo field and stuff like that and movements of that. The drums came out in the interlude section similar to the way they did in the previous track in a way that added a sense of dynamic range to it. I still feel like we could have potentially have had like a different sort of like an alternate lead instrument or something kind of finish off the track to sort of like tie things together and maybe it's had sense unison, but more of a sense of unison between the arrangement and the main vocals aside from the fact that they're backing them up, but that's totally fine. I think overall it's a nicer sounding song to finish off this journey we've had with a track that sounded reasonably stylistically consistent throughout in a way that I think is past those synthetic electronic textures did elevate. Yeah, I feel like if we sort of look at what we've had previously, it's on par with the rest of the tracks within the album. I think that we did make good use of that real estate. Again, if we didn't switch things up in the interlude sections and add a sense of nuance to it, it might have been 4.5 minutes of too much, but I don't think that we made that mistake here. Overall, I feel like it's been a strong album. A lot of the comments for this track, for example, are ones I made previous sort of like conclusions, but we're going to talk about this album more in the conclusion in a moment. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this album from an act named Echo Strike titled Wonderland. Now, I've already spoken about all the tracks in detail. This has been a long, long review, so I'm going to make sure that I'm as succinct as reasonable here without sort of like, like kind of making a mess of it. But what is this album about? I think this is about someone being in a precarious situation where they go out, they fall down a rabbit hole, they realize just how much they've kind of been struggling with stuff since they got sort of like shown a different perspective. They've been sick because of the person that they're with. They've been trying to find this person and kind of have a situation with them, but it's kind of been hit and miss and they're kind of giving up on things. They're trying to find a way through their life, but they're struggling to be able to do that. And they're getting told to ride the wave and kind of get with the flow of things and try different things. And then when they try that, they realize how dependent they are on that high and they kind of give into it again. Or maybe they give into another one and they become dependent on it. And they just realize that maybe that addiction to love that they have or something else is just too much. And so they're getting smothered by it or overwhelmed. And so they need to leave. They just don't realize they're in an uncomfortable environment. Eventually they find shelter and then they get out into the sun and they sort of look back on the life that they wouldn't have had with that person. And I think that's effectively what the album is. It's got this overall concept that I think is open to interpretation to clearly to any level of extent, because that is subjectivity in a nutshell. But for me, that's how I think it works. Vocally, I think that both singers, male and female, did well. They were comfortable in their ranges. There was some tuning that was going on with the guy's voice there that you could tell was going on. You could hear that was apparent there. But I still feel like I enjoyed listening to it, and it had a nice texture and timbre to it, and it typically behaved very well in regards to harmonizing with the other elements within each of the arrangements. I think that the lady's voice had a little bit less treatment on it in terms of the tuning. They cleared those notes really elegantly, and that's not me saying that the male vocalist can't sing. That's just the tones and textures I was hearing in regards to production and the actual performance itself. You can have good vocal technique and still want to have a different sound to your vocals. But I think that the ladies' pipes, they were a bit more kind of like they're raw and less kind of filtered, and so they contrasted neatly with each other in a way that did not alienate. And there was lots of cool and responding together and occasional sort of separate. Sometimes we'd sing melodies, other times we'd just sing the words. It's, there's a lot of variety over these 12 tracks, and I think that's a positive thing. Instrumentally, I think each of these tracks had a combination of different bass and drum parts alongside synths or keys, synth pads, synth sequencers, synth leads, although they were typically pseudo leads. We didn't really have any other sort of lead instrumental as aside from, I think, a guitar solo on one of the tracks. And I feel like that guitar solo could have been more prominent, but that's something that I also spoke about at that particular point section. It's just simply, for me, it's acknowledging that while I appreciate how important the storytelling is that when you usually have one lead element in a track. And so it can be good if that thing is happening most of the time to allow that lead to be that dominant thing. Just because if you have it too short in the mix or too low in the mix, people will listen in closely to it and then wonder why other stuff is happening on the sides to sort of maybe distract them from that. It's not a criticism, it's just general sort of like feedback. And that's with understanding that I also mentioned they could potentially have added other lead parts over like vocal chorus stuff as well. So that I know that's kind of besides the point, but it's, you know what I mean? It's like, I suppose, sort of structurally speaking, these tracks are really sound. Most of them are 3 to 4 minutes. Some of them are shorter than that. They have verses and choruses and instrumental kind of breaks and stuff like that. And some of them have, again, like a couple of them have solo sections. Other parts, they really sort of focus on that chorus. They're very comfortable projecting that hook forward. And like with one of the parts, the songs had like a tribal voicing or something like that. They came in after a few times of that, or maybe a little bit earlier before we maybe ready for that guitar solo, just because I really wanted to kind of like have that hook line be prominent. And I think that's fine. It can just be good to allow more room for the instruments to do their thing. But to be fair as well, we did allow there to be instrumental parts. So I feel like that's a personal sort of like a preferential decision thing. There could be like a stylistic decision there that I'm missing just simply because I need to listen through again for context. But in general, I feel like the actual performances on the drums, the bass, some of the guitar parts for the funky sort of like chords, the bar chords, etc. Working with octaves on the bass there and typically being sort of like around the root notes of them, and mixture different quarter, eighth, and 16th note grooves on the drums. They were typically rolling with the chord note accents for a dance feel with those, with occasional sort of like tom fills to go between parts. And like the plethora of different synth layers, all the mix I mentioned, typically either sort of like carving out the triads individually or arpeggiating them, or alternatively some occasional extensions, or we're trying to sort of like play a pseudo lead there, move around the stereo field and move things out that way or something like that, and just providing more of an atmosphere or ambience. There's lots of utility to be found in synthesizers, and we did maximize them here. And I think that typically, like across the board, this was just a very good album to listen to. Like aside from the comments I've had about like potential further development and adding things later on, and potentially going for a less minimalist, like it's quality. Like I think thematically I've spoken about what each track is, and typically I could kind of get behind the chord choices and decisions that we had there. Occasionally I was like, does this track's progression, its main melody and everything sort of accurately and actively communicate in a similar way to what the vocals are doing? And that wasn't always the case, but I think that was a deliberate decision considering their experience. So maybe they're trying to soften the intensity of some of the harder vocal parts there, or some of the more intense lines there, to try and sort of make it more palatable. In which case, I think, yeah, you got to do what you got to do. I appreciate that, and I also understand that if you're too blunt with it, it can be a little bit on the nose. You know what I mean? But like ultimately, I think the themes did most of the time they matched quite well. The studio production was great. I appreciate the clarity and the quality of the vocals, both when they were cleaner, when they were tuned, the reverb and delay tails, the filtering of them and the panning and stuff like that, some of the distortion of the vocals as well. We had a lot of cool effects on the vocals, and the guitars, bass, drums, synths, and everything like that were really well notched within the frequency spectrum and the stereo field as well, with the music surrounding you in the headphones, some almost like some sort of 3D audio stuff occasionally, like surrounding your entire to your head. It sounded like the sound was behind you. And I don't really think that performatively, instrumentally, they could have done anything to improve it. I feel like they recorded those takes well. It's simply a band that knows what they're doing at this point, is very experienced, and has a set goal and direction they want to go in. And I think that this is a positive one. There was dynamic range to these, both compositionally from an actual production perspective. Occasionally, tracks were like in just a little bit earlier than I'd be expecting, but that's okay. Typically, things were leveled really, really well, and they were nice and loud without pumping, so the bus compression limiting was handled. I suppose for me, when I've talked about things maybe necessarily coming up a bit more and kind of teasing us with the choruses not being as like intense as you would assume with the way they're building, that's not a production thing. That's a composition thing. That's a deliberate decision there to kind of not have as much energy as you might be expecting there. Because if it was a production decision and you were just boosting stuff, it would be more kind of repugnant, in the sense that it would be more noticeable. Like if someone deliberately boosts something to only be more audible in the mix, in the chorus, you're going to hear that. But here, I think it was a deliberate decision to kind of play around with intentions, and I think that's fine. Ultimately, I'm glad I got the chance to listen to this album. I feel like a lot of it was really well done. I feel like in general, I appreciated the shorter tracks. I feel like I got the hang of the concept in a more succinct form factor, because a lot of the longer tracks, even though there was some cool stuff in some of them that made the most of that longer time, I just feel like the shorter tracks were kind of like popcorn. And I think that while I wouldn't have wanted them to change anything with the longer tracks, it's just, I think with the ones where you get familiar with the theme, I'm spending time as a reviewer more with the longer ones going, okay, what can we add to this to kind of further develop it? Even if it's really good to listen to, just because I'm a bit greedy. But so that's basically what I've sort of primarily made my decision on in regards to my favorite tracks. So I suppose, songs like Shelter and Place were kind of cool, and Cirrus High as well were cool. But I like the others as well. That's effectively my review of this album from an act named Echo Strike, titled Wonderland. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via the various social medias and the Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I will catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.